A crystal trophy killed me in my first life. In my second, Instructor Draven held my only crystal above his head before 600 students and announced that it was too weak to scratch butter. The laughter reached the glass roof of the Awakening Hall. The stone between Draven's fingers was clear and no larger than my smallest fingernail. Beauty was not useful when everyone else had awakened fire, steel, lightning, or large teeth. Draven placed my crystal on the black testing plate. The plate produced a weak chime. Decorative crystal affinity, he said. Estimated combat rank, lower than F. Rowan will leave the combat course today. My name vanished from the bronze ranking wall. I had occupied the 600th place for only 3 breaths. Kellen stood beside the instructor in a red uniform. A crystal core the size of an apple floated above his palm. Fire rolled through it like an angry fish trapped in a bowl. "Do not look so serious, Rowan," he said. "You can sell jewelry outside the arena. I may even buy a button from you." His friends laughed. Kellen's family owned 3 mines and paid for half the Western Training Hall. His father had promised those mines to whichever son reached the top 10 before winter. I did not answer him. I watched Draven's right sleeve 5 minutes earlier. The true testing prism had shown my affinity as 86. The number had glowed in white light long enough for me, Draven, Kellen, and the front 2 rows to see it. Draven had covered the prism with his sleeve. When he moved his arm, the number was 18. Then he had given the last high-grade awakening seed to Kellen. I received a cracked seed from the demonstration box. The injustice was not hidden. It was simply expensive enough that nobody wanted to see it. Lyra sat in the second row. She was a crystal mage, and her eyes stayed on my little stone instead of Kellen's fire core. When Draven called for the next student, she raised one hand. "Instructor, the purity reading did not appear," she said. Draven smiled without warmth. "Purity matters only when there is power to purify." The prism first showed 86. The hall became quiet. Kellen's smile tightened. Draven tapped the testing plate with one finger. The displayed record still showed 18. "Are you accusing Academy equipment of lying?" he asked. "I am asking for a second test. Then you may pay the retest fee, 50 gold. Several students looked away. 50 gold was more than my food allowance for 2 years. It was also more than Lyra carried. Draven turned to the hall. "The result stands. Rowan has no combat value. Anyone who continues to delay the ceremony will join him outside the combat course." Lyra lowered her hand, but she did not lower her eyes. Draven dropped my crystal into my palm. Kellen leaned close enough for me to smell the expensive spice oil in his hair. "You should thank me," he whispered. "The high-grade seed would have been wasted on an orphan." I closed my fingers around the stone. "I will remember that," I said. He laughed because he thought it was a threat. It was only a plan. By noon, my combat uniform had been taken away. The clerk gave me a gray maintenance coat, a broom, and a work order for the old crystal greenhouse. My monthly allowance fell from 12 silver to 3. My room in the combat dormitory would be reassigned at midnight. I owned 2 copper coins, 1 cracked seed, and a broom. Taro found me sweeping the greenhouse. He worked in the kitchen and studied support magic between meals. "I heard you awaken the mighty power of table decoration," he said. "News moves quickly. Bad news runs, good news stops for lunch." He lifted the cover. Thick onion soup steamed inside the bowl. Melted cheese covered a slice of dark bread floating on top. The edges were brown and crisp. I had eaten nothing since dawn, and the smell nearly defeated all my discipline. Taro handed me the spoon. "Eat before you begin polishing the Empire to death." I sat on an empty planting box. The soup was sweet from slow-cooked onions and rich with butter. The bread had absorbed the broth while keeping a crisp cheese edge. Warmth spread through my chest. 3 silver a month will not cover the dorm fee," Taro said. "I know. You can sleep in the kitchen storehouse. The sacks of flour are polite. Most of them do not snore." "Most?" "One sack is suspicious." I almost smiled. The greenhouse door opened. Lyra stepped inside with my test record in one hand. Her silver hair was tied back, and 3 pale crystals floated near her shoulder. "Draven locked the original prism record," she said. "I could not copy it." "You tried. That was enough." "No, it was not." She looked at the tiny crystal in my palm. "May I see it?" I handed it to her. One of her floating crystals touched mine. Hers shone with a clean white light. Mine drank that light for half a second. Lyra pulled her hand back. "Did you feel that?" "Ishish," she asked. "Yes." The little stone had become warm. Draven had ordered me to clear the greenhouse before night. The room contained dead vines, cracked pots, and shelves covered with gray dust. Lyra stayed. Taro stayed until a cook shouted his name from across the courtyard. By sunset, the floor was clean and my arms ached. When the last ray of light touched the cracked awakening seed, a calm voice spoke inside my head. It said that a hidden condition had been met. I had awakened a crystal with perfect memory purity and 0 natural force. 3 hidden classes became available to me. The Keeper of Spells reserved one powerful spell. The creator of magic cores needed 10 years to build its first engine. The Crystal King grew many weak, connected stones. I chose the Crystal King. Quantity was a kind of power that rich people often forgot to fear. The system did not give me a weapon, gold, or a friendly dragon. It gave me one rule. Any crystal I grew could remember one magical effect that entered it. Magic in this world vanished after it was cast. Fire became heat. Healing became repaired flesh. A strengthening spell disappeared when its time ended. That was considered a natural law. My crystals broke that law. The system told me my current mana reserve was 24. Growing one basic crystal cost 4 mana. Each crystal could hold 12 mana. Releasing its memory would empty or destroy it. 6 weak crystals were all I could make before collapsing. 6 was enough to begin. I held out my hand. 4 points of mana left my body. A sharp pain moved through my fingers. Clear material pushed from my palm like ice growing on a winter window. In 8 seconds, a crystal the size of a coin rested in my hand. Lyra stared at it. You grew that without a seed. It cost 4 mana. Natural crystal mages need 4 days. Mine is weak. It holds 12. 12 what? That is what we are going to test. I placed the crystal on a stone bench and stepped behind an old iron planter. Use your weakest attack. Lyra frowned. My weakest light needle can pierce leather. Then aim carefully. She pointed one finger. White light gathered at the tip. The spell contains 10 mana, she said. If your calculation is wrong, it will cross the bench and hit you. Then stand a little to the left. Tara will complain if I bleed into a soup bowl. She did not laugh. She was too focused. The light needle struck my crystal. There was no explosion. The white line folded into the clear stone and vanished. A perfect image of the needle appeared inside it, small and bright. Lyra stopped breathing for a moment. The system calmly informed me that the crystal had stored 10 units of light magic. 2 units of capacity remained. I touched the crystal and pointed toward a hanging sack of soil. The light needle flew out. It crossed the greenhouse and punched through the sack. Dark soil poured onto the floor we had just cleaned. The crystal split in half. Lyra looked from the hole to me. You did not copy or cast my spell. You caught it. 10 units out of 10. Her expression changed. In the awakening hall, she had looked at me with concern. Now she looked at me as if a locked door had opened in a familiar wall. Draven was wrong, she said. Draven lied. That is different. The system announced that my class had reached its 2nd level. My mana reserve rose from 24 to 30. The increase was small, but it was real. My power had grown. I still had 2 copper coins. My name was still missing from the combat wall. 2 of the 3 scales had not moved yet. Someone clapped from the greenhouse door. Kellen stood there with 4 friends. Behind them, students were crossing the courtyard toward the evening meal. At least 40 had already stopped to watch. A lovely trick, Kellen said. Lyra fires a spell, and Rowan breaks a pebble. Perhaps the circus will accept both of you. Lyra stepped between him and the bench. You were following me. I was protecting Academy property. Rowan was expelled from combat training. He has no right to test attack magic. His eyes moved to the broken crystal. If my ability became public, people would question my score and the high-grade seed in his chest. Kellen raised his voice so the growing crowd could hear. Rowan used Lyra's spell. That proves nothing about his own combat value. Then test me, I said. He smiled at once. He had wanted those words. A formal challenge? A measured strike. You attack. I remain behind the red line. If I stop your spell, you pay 15 silver and request my return to the combat course. If I fail, I leave the academy tonight. The courtyard became silent. 15 silver was not much to Kellen. Removing me permanently was worth far more. Accepted, he said. He turned and rang the bronze challenge bell before Lyra could object. The sound rolled through every dormitory. More than 300 people filled the western practice yard. Taro arrived in his apron carrying a bread knife. Do I need the knife? He asked. Only if the bread attacks. Draven read the challenge terms. His jaw tightened when he reached the requirement to restore me to the combat course. This is irresponsible, he said. The bell was accepted, Lyra replied. Academy law requires the test. Draven could cancel it, but not without explaining himself before 300 witnesses. He activated the measuring barrier. I had recovered 20 mana while cleaning and eating. I used all of it to grow 5 crystals. Together, they could hold exactly 60 mana. I placed them in a shallow arc on the red line. The system warned me that linked storage had never been tested. If one crystal failed, the remaining force would reach my body. I already knew that. Kellen walked to the opposite mark. His fire core spun above his hand. Flames shaped themselves into the head and shoulders of a horned ram. The measuring pillar rose to 40 units. The students murmured. It climbed to 50. Lyra's fingers closed around my sleeve. It reached 60. Draven should have stopped the test at 50. He did not. Kellen's face shone red behind the fire. A button maker should know when to kneel, he shouted. A mine-heir should know how to count, I replied. He released the fire ram. The spell crossed the yard with a roar. Heat struck my face. The first crystal caught 12 units and turned red. The second caught 12, then the third, fourth, and fifth filled in sequence. For one terrible moment, the fire stood around me like an open mouth. Then it vanished. 5 red crystals rested on the ground. The measuring pillar showed 0. Nobody spoke. Kellen stared at his empty hand. 60 units stored, I said. Thank you for the demonstration. The crowd exploded with noise. Students pushed closer to the barrier. Someone shouted that the testing plate had been wrong. Someone else shouted that Draven had known. My name appeared on the public rumor board before the dust settled. Kellen stepped backward. The challenge was to stop it, he said. You stopped it. The test is over. The crystals still contain your attack. I lifted one hand. The 5 stones rose together. Fine lines of red light connected them. Draven moved toward the barrier control. Lyra placed her own crystal over the switch. The accepted rules permit a return strike, she said. Kellen raised a family shield. It was a polished golden disc rated to block 70 units. My network released 60. The fire ram returned with its horns brighter than before, though the measured force remained exactly the same. It struck the center of Kellen's shield. The disc survived. Kellen did not remain behind it. He crossed the sand on his shoulders and landed inside the fire barrel. His helmet spun away like the lid of a frightened cooking pot. 300 witnesses watched him climb out with pondweed hanging from one ear. The laughter that followed was louder than the laughter in the awakening hall. I did not join it. I checked my hands. All 5 crystals had shattered. Thin cuts covered my fingers, and I had no mana left. Power had a price. Mine was blood, preparation, and arithmetic. The measuring pillar confirmed that I had stopped and returned 60 units. The result entered the Academy record. Automatically, Draven could not cover it with his sleeve. My class rose to the 3rd level. My mana reserve increased from 30 to 36. Kellen placed 15 silver coins on the judges' table. Each one sounded very pleasant. Draven restored my combat status through clenched teeth. The ranking wall placed me at 412th above every student who had failed to block 40 units that term. My strength had increased. My money had risen from 2 copper coins to 15 silver and 2 copper. My status had moved from expelled maintenance worker to active combat student. All 3 scales had moved in one day. Taro took us to the closed kitchen after the crowd dispersed. He cut thick slices of bread, covered them with sharp cheese, and toasted them until the edges crackled. He served more onion soup, roasted carrots glazed with honey, and warm milk scented with cinnamon. Lyra cleaned the cuts on my hands. Her healing magic was weak, but she worked slowly and did not miss a single piece of crystal. You knew the shield would hold, she said. It was rated for 70. And if Kellen had used more than 60, Draven wanted my failure to look legal. 60 was the strongest attack he could ignore without stopping the match. Taro placed another piece of cheese bread on my plate. You both discuss attempted murder like 2 accountants checking a dinner bill. The dinner bill matters, I said. I can afford it now. For the first time that day, Lyra laughed. It was a quiet sound. I liked it more than the noise of the arena. Near midnight, I returned to the greenhouse to collect the cracked awakening seed. It was no longer cold. A pulse moved through it. The floor answered. Far below the academy, something enormous beat once like a crystal heart. In the director's underground chamber, Draven stood before Osric and repeated the result of my duel. I did not hear their conversation that night, but I learned its exact words later. Osric placed one hand on a crystal larger than a house. Do not expel Rowan, the director said. Bring him closer. If his crystals can remember 60 units, the Divine Core may finally be able to remember him. The next morning, my victory was written on every public board in the academy. Half the reports said I had caught Kellen's fire. The other half said I had swallowed it. Taro read the largest notice while serving breakfast. According to this one, you opened your mouth and ate the fire ram, he said. Did it mention seasoning? No. Poor reporting. He gave me a bowl of oat porridge with butter, baked apples, and a line of dark honey across the top. Lyra sat opposite me and moved my spoon away while she inspected the cuts on my fingers. You cannot grow more crystals until these close, she said. My mana is already full. Your mana does not hold the crystals. Your hands do. That is inconvenient. She wrapped my fingers in clean cloth. Try being made of flesh for one morning. My peaceful breakfast ended when Draven entered the dining hall. Every conversation stopped. He wore his formal examiner coat and the expression of a man delivering a gift that contained a snake. Rowan, he called. Your restored status requires a field evaluation. You will join today's survey of the North Crystal Mine. The notice in his hand promised 30 gold for mapping a newly opened tunnel. That was enough money to pay my room and food for 2 years. It was also far too generous for a student ranked 412th. Who else is assigned? I asked. Kellen entered behind him. His hair was dry again, but a small green leaf still clung near his ear. Several students noticed it. The dining hall filled with badly hidden laughter. This is a cooperative evaluation, Draven said. Kellen will lead. Kellen removed the leaf without changing his expression. I accept, I said. Draven had expected fear or an argument. My answer displeased him more. Lyra stood. Crystal surveys require a resonance specialist. I volunteer. Your name is not on the order. Academy safety law requires one, unless you want the miners to hear why you refused. Draven looked around the full dining hall. He had discovered the weakness of public authority. Once people began watching, every small cruelty became expensive. Approved, he said. Before leaving, I spent 12 of my 15 silver on gloves, chalk, 2 healing vials, and a coil of strong rope. My wealth fell sharply, but my resources improved. Taro slipped 3 meat pies into my pack without charging me. 1 for you, 1 for Lyra, and 1 to throw if the mine contains something large, he said. Does that work? Everything pauses when good pastry is thrown at it. The North Mine lay 2 hours beyond the academy wall. A wooden lift carried us underground. It shook so badly that the lanterns rang against the beams. Kellen stood in one corner with 4 family guards. Lyra and I stood in the other. Between us, the mine supervisor checked the safety seals on his clipboard. The new tunnel is marked green, he said. Red marks mean unstable mana. Black marks mean run. What if there is no mark? I asked. Then someone removed it and you should run faster. He did not say it as a joke. At the lower station, 12 miners waited to witness the survey. Their wages depended on the tunnel opening. That gave them a reason to watch every measurement. I had recovered my full reserve of 36 mana. With Lyra binding my gloves tightly around the cuts, I grew 9 crystals over the 2-hour walk through the upper passage. Each cost 4 mana, each held 12. When the 9th formed, my legs felt hollow, but I had a total storage capacity of 108. Kellen watched the stones settle into loops on my belt. 9 pieces of jewelry, and he said, "You may frighten the rocks with fashion." Your shield has a dent shaped like a sheep, I replied. One miner laughed so hard that he dropped his pick. Kellen moved ahead. The new tunnel glittered with pale blue crystal. Lyra touched the wall and sent a soft pulse through it. Her magic returned as a low musical note. The vein is stable for 80 steps, she said. After that, something is blocking the signal. The supervisor wrote down her result. I counted the green safety seals as we walked. There were 7 at the entrance, 6 after the first turn, then none. The stone under my boot held a smear of green paint. Stop, I said. Kellen was already beyond the next support beam. One of his guards held a torn safety seal behind his leg. The wall moved. At first, I thought an entire section of the tunnel had collapsed. Then 2 red eyes opened in the stone. A crystal boar pulled itself from the wall. It stood twice as tall as a horse and wore layers of dark rock over its body. Blue crystals grew along its spine. The measuring charm on the supervisor's wrist screamed. "Rank C beast," he shouted. 84 units in its charge. Everyone back. The miners ran toward the lift. Kellen and his guards ran first. The last support beam cracked above them. A slab of stone fell and blocked half the passage. 3 miners remained on the wrong side with Lyra and me. The boar lowered its head. Blue light spread from its spine into its legs. The supervisor's charm gave a second reading. "Granite strength," he shouted through the gap. 20-point body enhancement. The boar charged. Lyra raised a crystal barrier. Its measured defense was 30. The boar hit it with 84. The barrier broke like thin ice. I pulled 2 crystals from my belt and placed them against the last pieces of Lyra's spell. The stones filled with blue light, but the boar's charge was already passing them. I rolled beneath one tusk. Rock tore my coat. The beast struck the wall and filled the tunnel with dust. The system spoke while I pushed myself up. My crystals had not stored an attack. They had stored the effect that made the boar strong. Magic was magic. My class did not care whether it flew through the air or lived inside muscle. The 2 stones held 20 units of granite strength. That was the second consequence of perfect memory. "Rowan," Lyra called. "It is turning." I pressed both crystals against my chest and released them. They shattered. Power entered my arms, back, and legs. My natural strength measured 7. The stored effect added 20. For 10 minutes, my strength became 27. The change did not make me graceful. It made me feel as if someone had replaced my bones with iron bars while forgetting to explain the new weight. The boar charged again. I grabbed one tusk with both hands. The ground broke under my boots. Pain crossed my shoulders. The beast pushed me 6 steps, then 4, then 2. It stopped. Behind the fallen beam, the miners became silent. Kellen stared through the gap. "His strength was 7 yesterday," one guard said. "It still is," Lyra replied. He borrowed the boars. I turned the beast's head and drove it into the wall. The impact shook dust from the ceiling. One of the blue crystals on its spine cracked. The boar screamed and threw me aside. My temporary strength had solved one problem. It had not defeated a creature covered in stone. 7 empty crystals remained on my belt. Their combined capacity was 84. The beast's charge was also 84. Some answers were polite enough to arrive with matching numbers. I placed the 7 stones in a line across the tunnel. Lyra, make it angry. It already looks angry. Make it precise. She fired a weak light bolt into its left eye. The crystal boar roared. It aligned itself with me and gathered every part of its charge. The supervisor's charm climbed from 60 to 70, then to 84. I stood behind the line of crystals. Kellen shouted from the safe side, "Move, fool! Those stones will burst!" He sounded concerned. I did not mistake the reason. If I died, the questions about his seed died with me. The boar hit the first crystal. 12 units vanished, then another 12. The line filled from left to right. The last stone turned blue just as the boar's tusks reached my coat. Its entire charge disappeared. The beast had been moving with 84 units of magical force. Without that force, it was still a huge animal running on short legs. It stumbled. I stepped aside. The Perjrak Sershik de Kisak Fidis Retzert. The boar crossed the space where I had been, slid on loose gravel, and buried its head in the fallen support beam. The impact opened a narrow path to the other side. Kellen stood directly beyond it. The 7 crystals on the ground contained a perfect memory of the charge. I lifted my hand. "Do not," Kellen said. The miners had reached the gap. All 12 watched. The supervisor held up his recording charm. Even Kellen's own guards could see the torn green seals in one guard's hand. "The beast is still alive," I said. "I need a clear path." I am standing in the path. That is the problem. I released the stored charge into the stone beneath the boar. The force struck from behind and launched the creature through the broken beam. Kellen raised his dented shield. The boar hit it with a slow, majestic certainty. Kellen, his shield, and the boar rolled together into a mining cart filled with wet clay. The cart traveled 20 steps down the rail and stopped against a stack of empty buckets. Each bucket fell onto Kellen one at a time. There were 9 buckets. The miners counted them aloud. When the last bucket landed, the boar's cracked core went dark. The supervisor declared the beast defeated. Kellen climbed from the clay. Only his eyes remained clean. "He caused this," he shouted, pointing at me. The guard carrying the torn seals tried to hide them. My last unbroken crystal had not stored force. When the guard crossed the tunnel earlier, I had held it near the green safety charm on his belt. The stone had remembered the charm's magical signature. I touched it to the torn seals. They shone with the same red pattern. The supervisor compared both readings before 12 miners. They matched exactly. "Your guard removed Academy safety seals," he said to Kellen. "That makes your family responsible for the attack and all damage to this tunnel." Kellen looked toward his guards. They looked at the floor. His reason was obvious. If the tunnel remained closed, his family could purchase the mining rights cheaply. My death would have been a useful extra result. "You cannot prove I gave the order," he said. "No," I replied. "But your father will receive a bill before you reach home." The miners laughed. Kellen had been mocked at the academy. This was worse. Mine workers carried stories into every tavern, warehouse, and guild office in the region. The supervisor reopened the tunnel after Lyra confirmed the vein was stable. Behind the boar's nest, we found a cluster of violet crystal worth more than the original survey reward. The guild office was full when we returned that evening. Miners, merchants, and students crowded around the public result board. The supervisor submitted his recording. The board confirmed that I had stopped an 84-unit charge, saved 3 trapped miners, and exposed removed safety seals. My combat rank rose from 412th to 183rd. The guild promoted my field license from provisional F to full E. My class reached its 6th level, and my mana reserve rose from 36 to 72. The clerk counted 30 gold onto the counter. Kellen's family paid another 12 gold for damaged equipment and medical costs. 3 of those coins came to me for my torn coat and healing. After buying crystal wire, stronger gloves, and enough clear mineral powder for future experiments, I still carried 31 gold, 3 silver, and 2 copper. My strength had doubled in class level and mana. My resources had changed from borrowed tools to professional materials. My name now stood in the top 200. All 3 scales moved again. A woman with short, dark hair waited beside the board. She wore the gray coat of the Academy Research Wing and held a lens over one eye. "My name is Selma," she said. "I study magical cores. Your crystals stored a body enhancement and then placed it inside a human body without rejection for 10 minutes. The best military core can do it for 12 seconds. It costs 400 gold and occasionally explodes." Taro, who had come to collect us, looked interested. "How large is the explosion?" "Large enough to remove the need for a refund." Selma did not smile. That made Taro smile for both of them. She asked to examine the violet cluster from the boar's nest. When her lens touched it, the crystal produced a faint human heartbeat. Selma's calm expression disappeared. This mineral did not grow in the mine, she said. It was planted here. Its structure matches the Academy Foundation. The guild clerk looked over. Selma wrapped the cluster in cloth. We should discuss this somewhere private. Private discussion waited until after dinner. Taro refused to investigate conspiracies on an empty stomach. He served beef stew in deep bowls. The meat had cooked until it separated under a spoon. Carrots and potatoes carried the taste of pepper, herbs, and thick brown broth. He placed fresh bread beside it, hot enough to melt the butter at once. Lyra ate 2 bowls. I ate 3. Temporary strength has a cost, I explained. Your cost appears to be my entire stew pot, Taro said. Selma placed the wrapped violet crystal in the center of the table. Director Osric ordered similar samples transferred to a sealed laboratory for the last 24 years. The records call them foundation repairs. Foundations do not have heartbeats. I touched the cluster. The little stones on my belt were empty, but the broken awakening seed in my pocket became warm. A line of blue light connected it to the violet crystal. A woman's voice entered the room. Rowan, it whispered. Lyra's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. Selma stood so quickly that her chair fell. The crystal spoke again. My name is Vera. I graduated first in my year. Osric took my body, my magic, and 19 years of my life. The violet cluster cracked. Far beneath our feet, the giant crystal heart beat twice. Do not let him complete me, Vera said. I am already 96% awake. At dawn, Selma tested Vera's silent fragment inside an iron cooking pot. Taro objected. That pot has made stew for 9 years. It has a noble magical signature. The fragment held human mana, a spell pattern, and memory from the same person. Vera had not left a message. Part of her was the message. A soul is a stable magical effect tied to identity, Selma said. Osric's core uses the same design as your crystals. He spent 24 years building the rule you reached in one day. That was flattering and dangerous. A bell rang across the academy. My name appeared in red light above the laboratory door. Instructor Draven had called me to an emergency team qualification at noon. Failure would cancel my restored combat status. Refusal would count as failure. He waited less than a day, Lyra said. He is becoming efficient, I replied. Selma opened the official notice. The test required a 3-person team. We would cross the Western Arena, defeat or avoid 1 rank E training beast, and ring the finish bell within 12 minutes. 500 seats had already been opened to students and staff. Draven wanted witnesses. He had learned the wrong lesson from Kellen. I will join, Lyra said. Taro lifted the iron pot. I suppose every combat team needs a cook. Can you fight? Selma asked. I know heat palm, wind step, and the secret technique of hitting something with a pan. The pan may be your strongest skill. At last, professional recognition. I had 72 mana and 6 hours. I spent 10 gold on 2 mana tonics and silver wire. With natural recovery, I could spend 224 mana. The tonics tasted like mint mixed with bad decisions. By late morning, I had grown 56 crystals. 36 went into my armor, and Taro hid 20 beneath the judge's platform. The armor's total capacity was 432. Silver wire joined its stones across leather that resembled a violent chandelier. Taro walked around me once. If the battle fails, stand near a window and improve the room. Lyra ignored him. She touched one group of crystals and slowly cast Light Needle. Instead of releasing it toward a target, she allowed the spell to form through the stones. The crystals did not only hold 10 units of light, they held the order in which she shaped those 10 units. The third consequence was simple. A spell was also experience. If a willing caster placed its complete pattern inside my crystal, I could release that memory without knowing the spell. By noon, Lyra and Taro had filled most of the armor. It carried 6 light needles with a total force of 60. 4 crystal barriers held 120. 4 wind steps held 48. 3 heat pulses held 120. 7 crystals remained empty with a combined capacity of 84. The armor stored 17 uses of 4 spells and 348 units of magic. I could use the magic of my entire team. Every stored spell would be lost after 1 release. My own mana reserve had fallen to 11. If the armor broke, the spells could explode against my body. Power had increased. Money had fallen from 31 gold to 21. Status depended on the next 12 minutes. The Western Arena was full when we arrived. 500 students filled the seats. The public ranking wall hung above the finish bell. Kellen sat in the first row with his arm in a sling. He had been suspended from field leadership during the mine investigation, but his family badge still gave him a good seat. When I entered, someone in the upper rows shouted, "Open your mouth, Rowan." The crowd laughed. Taro waved. He already ate breakfast. The laughter changed sides. Draven stood beside Director Osric on the judge's platform. Osric was a broad man with gray at his temples and a calm, tired face. He wore no crown or heavy jewelry. He looked like someone who had spent his life carrying a difficult duty. That made him more dangerous than Kellen. Osric raised one hand, and the arena quieted. "Yesterday's events created doubt about our examination system," he said. "Today, Rowan will receive a fair public test." The crowd approved. Draven did not look at him. Selma stood among the independent research observers. She held the original awakening seed in a sealed glass box. Draven saw it and touched the ring on his right hand. I noticed. The arena gate opened. A training wolf was supposed to emerge. It would measure 20 to 30 units and avoid lethal attacks. Instead, an ash lion walked onto the sand. It stood as high as my shoulder. Black smoke rolled from its mane. Each step left a glowing print. The measuring pillars rose at once. 100 units, then 180, then 260. The crowd stopped laughing. "Rank C," Lyra said. "That cage was marked Rank E." Draven spoke through the arena horn. "The beast appears to have evolved. The team may surrender. Surrender will count as a failed qualification." Osric turned his head toward him. His surprise looked perfect. Too perfect. "Can the barrier hold it?" Taro asked. I checked the 4 pillars. Their usual blue light had a thin red line inside it. "Draven changed the barrier frequency," I said. "It will hold until the lion attacks the seats. That is a very specific kind of useless. It is meant to look like an accident." The ash lion roared. Heat rolled across the sand. The timer began at 12 minutes. Our goal was the bell on the opposite side. We did not need to kill the beast. "Wind step," I said. One crystal on my right boot broke. Taro's spell pushed me forward with 12 units of air. I crossed 20 steps before the lion turned. Lyra moved left. Taro moved right. The lion followed me because my armor contained the most many. That was expected. It breathed a line of gray fire. I released one crystal barrier. 30 stored units formed a clear wall. The flame struck with 50. The barrier lasted less than a second, but that second let me use another wind step. The audience reacted to every release. They knew Lyra's barriers. They knew Taro's movement spell. They watched me use both without casting either. Lyra drew the lion aside. I struck the glowing prints beneath its feet with 2 stored light needles. It slipped while Taro reached the bell. Draven moved one finger, and the bell rose 10 steps. The crowd shouted in protest. "Arena adjustment," Draven announced. "The bell mechanism is reacting to the beast's fire." Taro looked up at it. Of course, bells are famous for fear. Taro jumped and missed the rope. The lion charged him. 2 heat pulses threw me across the arena, burning my boots, and I carried Taro away before the claws landed. "My rescue was excellent," Taro said. "Your landing needs salt." The ash lion's measured power rose to 280. The beast was feeding on the altered barrier. Red cracks appeared in the nearest pillar. Draven ordered the front rows to remain seated. Kellen stood and pointed at the failing pillar. "The western barrier is failing," he shouted. "Move the front rows now." His family name would not survive 500 injured witnesses. His motive was not pure, but it was useful. The lion leaped toward Lyra. She raised her strongest natural barrier. It measured 42. The claws carried 70. I placed myself beside her and released 2 stored barriers. The 3 layers combined at 102. The lion struck and bounced away. The crowd saw the number. The ranking board saw it too. My defensive record rose from 60 to 102. The timer passed 5 minutes. "The bell," Lyra said. "May, we still need the bell, Taro can reach it." "I can?" he asked. "You have a pan?" Understanding appeared on his face. I released the remaining 2 wind steps into Taro's back. He flew upward with 24 units of force, holding the iron cooking pot in both hands. He struck the floating bell. The sound rang across the academy. The pot rang too. Taro fell into a safety net. The bell landed on Draven's judging table. The qualification board displayed success with 4 minutes and 11 seconds remaining. 500 witnesses rose and cheered. Draven hit the control switch. The western barrier failed. The ash lion turned toward the open seats. People screamed. The beast gathered a final breath attack. The measuring pillar showed 84 units of ash fire. 7 crystals in my armor were still empty. Their capacity was also 84. I ran between the lion and the first row. The ash fire struck me. 1 crystal filled, then the next. Smoke covered my body. Heat passed through the wire and burned lines across my chest. For a moment, I could not see or breathe. Then the fire vanished. 7 black crystals rested against my armor. The crowd saw me standing where the attack had ended. I turned the stored fire downward and released it beneath the lion. The blast threw the beast into the air. Lyra formed a crystal wall above it. The lion struck the wall, fell back to the sand, and lost consciousness. The ranking board recorded an 84-unit capture, an 84-unit return, and 500 protected witnesses. My team had passed. The arena was safe. Draven still tried to speak. The test is invalid, he said. Unauthorized spell storage gave Rowan outside assistance. For 2 breaths, nobody reacted. Then the entire arena began to laugh. Taro climbed from the net with the pot stuck around 1 foot. He says teamwork is outside assistance, he called. The laughter became a roar. Selma walked onto the sand. She carried my awakening seed and a thick packet of records. I request a public evidence review, she said. Osric's calm face tightened for the first time. Draven raised his hand. Denied. You are the subject of the evidence. You cannot deny it. The research observers activated their recording crystals. The ranking board switched from combat results to review mode. Selma placed my awakening seed against the testing plate brought from the hall. A crystal remembers every magical effect that enters it, she said. This seed touched the plate during Rowan's examination. We asked it to release the sequence it received. White light formed above the sand. The number 86 appeared. The front rows went silent. The image of Draven's sleeve covered it. A small red spell left the ring on his right hand. The number changed to 18. The memory ended. Nobody needed an explanation. Kellen stood in the first row with his family core inside his chest. His face changed as 600 old witnesses and 500 new ones finally understood what had happened. Draven looked at Osric. The director did not move. Selma opened the packet. Instructor Draven changed 27 awakening results in 4 years. High-grade seeds went to sponsor families. Students with unusual storage affinities were assigned to sealed field missions and never returned to class. Draven's motivation was written in the payment records. His promotion, house, and research grant all depended on donor students reaching the top 100. Osric had also paid him for every rare affinity delivered to the Foundation laboratory. Draven pulled off his ring. Lightning gathered around his hand. The measuring pillars rose to 240. He aimed at Selma and the evidence. I had expected that. 20 empty crystals were buried beneath the judge's platform. I had grown them before entering the arena, then asked Taro to place them while delivering water. Their combined capacity was exactly 240. Draven released the lightning. The hidden network caught every unit. The bolt vanished 1 step from Selma. 20 crystals rose from the sand around the platform, filled with white fire. Draven looked down. You planned this, he said. I counted your ring yesterday. You cannot attack an instructor. The public review permits defensive return. Lyra checked. Lyra lifted a copy of the rulebook. I released the network. Draven's own lightning struck his examiner coat. The protective cloth saved his life. It did not save his dignity. He flew backward into the ranking wall. The wall tried to identify him as a student, failed, and stamped a large red word across his coat, failed. He slid down beneath my new score. 500 people watched the Academy guards remove his ring and bind his hands. His 4 years of public authority ended beneath a word he had used against hundreds of students. Director Osric stepped onto the sand. Draven acted without my knowledge, he said. He will face a complete investigation. Rowan and his team have passed with distinction. He offered me his hand. I looked at it, then at the faint violet light moving beneath his skin. Thank you, Director, I said without touching him. The reward for first distinction was 180 gold and a full combat scholarship. After my earlier purchases, my wealth rose to 201 gold, 3 silver, and 2 copper. My class reached level 10. My mana reserve rose from 72 to 160. The public ranking wall moved my name from 183rd to 27th. The capital tournament invitation appeared beneath it. My power had more than doubled. My resources now included a scholarship, spell armor, and a research laboratory shared with Selma. My status had moved into the Academy's top 30. That evening, Taro roasted 2 chickens with garlic, lemon, and herbs. Their skin cracked under the knife. Butter melted over potatoes, and Lyra brought an apple tart with a golden crust. Selma claimed she was too busy to eat, then took the largest piece. We sat in the kitchen after closing. No crowd watched us. No ranking wall measured how quickly the food vanished. Lyra replaced the bandage across my chest where the silver wire had burned me. You stood in front of 84 units of fire, she said. There were 500 people behind me. That does not make it less foolish. It made the calculation simple. She tied the bandage and kept her hand against my shoulder for a moment longer than necessary. I saw the 86, she said quietly. In the awakening hall, I thought everyone else would speak if I did. Then nobody did. You still spoke. Too late. Early enough for me to remember. Her face became warm. Taro placed the second chicken between us before either of us said something less safe. The violet cluster cracked open on Selma's work table. Vera's voice filled the kitchen. Osric is moving Draven below the academy, she said. There will be no trial. The divine core consumes abilities, experience, and identity. He is feeding Draven to it tonight. The floor pulsed. For a single instant, a transparent woman appeared inside every crystal in the room. She wore an old academy uniform and had a broken graduation medal around her neck. He took 3% from every top graduate for 24 years, Vera said. He took all of me because I discovered the chamber. Her image turned toward me. The capital inspector arrives tomorrow. Osric does not need your death, Rowan. He needs your class. I grew 120 crystals before sunrise. The first 40 cost my full reserve of 160 mana. 4 hours of rest gave it back. The second 40 emptied me again. A mana tonic restored the third reserve and left my tongue numb until breakfast. Each crystal held 12 units. Together, the network could store 1,440. I did not know what Zavan would bring from the capital. I only knew that powerful men became careless when their numbers looked larger than everyone else's. Taro prepared breakfast at a street stall outside the grand arena. He fried thin noodles with strips of beef, green onion, and ginger. A soft egg rested on top of each bowl. When I broke mine, the golden center covered the hot noodles like a rich sauce. Eat slowly, Lyra said. Your hands are shaking. That is the tonic. It is the third tonic in 2 days. That is also the tonic. She took the bottle from my pocket and gave it to Selma. No more today. Selma read the label. His heart may stop. Taro placed extra beef in my bowl. Then he should finish breakfast first. Wasting food would damage his reputation. The grand arena rose above the academy wall. 20,000 seats surrounded a white stone field. Broadcast crystals floated over the entrances, carrying the tournament to guild halls and public squares across the region. Every victory would have more witnesses than all my previous battles combined. Kellen approached our table without guards. He wore a plain coat instead of his red uniform. The sling was gone, but clay still remained in the small joints of his family shield. Taro pointed to an empty chair. Sit. The noodles have not heard about the mine. Kellen remained standing. He placed a sealed letter beside my bowl. My father received this from Osric last month, he said. After the tournament, every finalist's core will be taken to the Foundation Chamber for a purity blessing. The letter promises sponsor families a higher rank if they cooperate. Selma broke the seal. Violet lines moved across the page. The order carried Osric's signature and Zevon's imperial stamp. Why give this to us? Lyra asked. Kellen looked toward the arena. I wanted the mines. I did not agree to become part of one. He had finally understood what a rare core meant to the people above him. It did not make him a partner. It made him valuable material. Testify publicly, I said. Against my father and the director? You brought a letter to a breakfast stall surrounded by broadcast crystals. You already started. Kellen looked up. One floating crystal had turned toward him. His face became pale. Taro gave him a bowl. Good news. You can blame the noodles. The capital procession arrived before Kellen found an answer. A silver carriage descended from the sky on 4 wings of light. Inspector Zaven stepped onto the arena platform. He was younger than Osric and dressed in white armor covered with gold lines. A narrow crown-shaped helmet rested beneath one arm. The announcer listed his titles for so long that one of the arena birds landed, rested, and flew away before the list ended. Zevon raised 2 fingers. The announcer stopped. Today, the Empire will identify power worthy of protection, he said. His eyes found me among thousands. He did not say who needed protection from whom. The tournament began with 64 competitors. My first opponent used 2 steel wolves. I released 2 stored wind steps, crossed the field, and placed empty crystals against both control cores. The stones caught the command magic. The wolves sat down. The match lasted 19 seconds. The audience became quiet, then shouted my name. My second opponent created a rotating wall of ice measured at 110. I used stored heat pulses from my rebuilt bracer. The ice became a cloud of warm rain. The opponent surrendered before I crossed it. My third opponent carried a speed blessing that increased agility by 30. One crystal caught the blessing when his strike hit my guard. I placed the memory into my own legs. For 8 minutes, his advantage became mine. He chased me for half the match. Then I turned, crossed the entire field in 3 breaths, and tapped his back with the surrender marker. The arena laughed when he continued running for 6 more steps before realizing the match had ended. Each result appeared on the public board. 19 seconds, 110 units removed, 30 agility borrowed. My name moved from 27th to 9th, then 5th, then 2nd. My class did not create more raw power than my opponents. It made their preparation available to me. That frightened the capital delegation. Zevan called for a pause before the final match. He entered the field with Osric and 6 Imperial guards. 20,000 people watched them approach me. The broadcast crystals moved closer. "Rowan," Zevon said, "your class has been reviewed under the Imperial Strategic Gifts Act. Abilities capable of storing rank C magic or higher must be registered under capital control. My ability was listed below F yesterday." Laughter moved through the seats. Zevon waited for it to fade. "Yesterday's examiner has been detained. The classification has changed. Then the law changes faster than my rank." More laughter followed. Zevon's expression remained calm, but the gold lines on his armor brightened. "You will transfer your class pattern to the Imperial Corps after the tournament. In return, you will receive 100 gold each year and the honorary rank of Capital Assistant." The crowd reacted before I did. The winner's prize for one tournament was 1,000 gold. Zevon had offered 1/10 of that per year for ownership of my class. "No," I said. The guards placed their hands on their weapons. Osric spoke quietly. "Consider the security of the Empire. I am considering the arithmetics." Zevon smiled. "Then let us measure it. The final match will become an Imperial evaluation. If you stop one attack from me, you will receive the championship and its full reward. If you fail, your class will enter protective custody. And if the attack kills him," Lyra called from the team area, "the arena barrier is rated for rank S." Selma checked the control pillar. "The barrier protects the audience. It does not protect the target." Her words went through every broadcast crystal. 20,000 witnesses heard the trap before I accepted it. I looked at Zevon's armor. The gold lines formed a complete casting array. The chest plate bore a defense rating of 1,300. He expected to attack from behind protection strong enough to survive his own spell. "I accept under the public return rule," I said. The arena erupted. Osric's eyes narrowed. Zevon lifted one hand. "Accepted." The judges cleared the field. Lyra connected the last silver wires across my coat. 120 clear crystals formed 12 rings around my arms, chest, legs, and back. "Their total capacity is 1,440, she said. "We do not know his attack value. His armor is rated at 1,300. He believes that is enough. That only tells us the attack is lower than the armor. No, it tells us he has never had his own spell returned." She tightened one wire, then caught my hand. "Come back with all your fingers. I will count them." That was not a joke. Neither was my answer. The field barrier closed between us. Zevon placed the crown-shaped helmet on his head. Its points unfolded into a ring of white fire. Light gathered above his palm and stretched into a spear longer than a wagon. The first measuring pillar showed 300. The second showed 600. The arena became silent. The third showed 900. Students near the front stepped back even though the barrier stood between us. The final number reached 1,200, rank S. The pressure alone cracked the white stone beneath Zevon's boots. "Last chance," he called. "Kneel, and the Empire will preserve you." "My crystals prefer standing." He released the crown spear. White light covered half the arena. I did not try to block it. A block would turn the magic into heat and force. I opened every connection in the lattice and allowed the spell to enter. The first ring filled, then the second. The spear did not slow. Magic passed through the silver wire and cut into my skin. The third ring filled, then the fourth. My knees struck the ground at 600 units. The crowd vanished behind white light. At 800, 3 crystals cracked. The remaining stones redistributed their share. At 1,000, blood reached my gloves. The system warned me that the network was losing alignment. Lyra's voice crossed the field. 12 rings, Rowan. Keep the gaps equal. She had built the pattern with me. She could see the mistake. I moved my left arm 1 finger higher. The rings aligned. The last 200 units entered at once. The crown spear disappeared. 120 crystals shone across my body. Each held 10 units. Together, they held exactly 1,200. For 3 breaths, nobody in the arena made a sound. Then every measuring pillar confirmed the stored value. 20,000 people stood. In guild halls and public squares, thousands more saw the same number. Zevon's hand remained extended. His face had lost all color. "The evaluation is complete," he said quickly. "You stopped the attack." He turned toward the exit. "The public return rule," I reminded him. The audience repeated the words. "Return, return, return." The chant shook the arena. I tried to lift my arms. Pain moved through every silver wire. The crystals had not reached their full capacity, but the stored spell already exceeded Zevon's normal attack defense by only 100. His armor might survive. Then the fourth consequence appeared. Every crystal held an identical piece of the same magical memory. Aligned memories did not remain separate. They resonated. The physical structure of of the crystals could be consumed to strengthen the remembered effect. Destroying all 120 stones would add 20%. 1,200 would become 1,440. I would lose the entire network. The release would also pass through my damaged channels. Zavon's armor held 1,300. I liked the arithmetic. Resonance release, I said. All 120 crystals cracked together. The sound was soft. The result was not. A crown spear formed above me, larger and brighter than Zavon's. The measuring pillars climbed to 1,440. The audience's chant stopped in a single breath. I pointed. The spear crossed the arena. Zavon activated his golden armor. 12 shields unfolded around him. The first broke. The second broke. White light swallowed the remaining 10. His defense held until 1,300. The last 140 units removed every gold plate from his body, launched him over the judge's platform, and dropped him into the ceremonial fountain behind Osric. His crown-shaped helmet landed in the water first. It floated like a small golden boat. Zavon surfaced, wearing a smoking white undersuit and one boot. 20,000 witnesses looked at him. Then the grand arena produced the loudest laugh I had heard in either of my lives. The broadcast crystals carried it across the region. I remained on my feet long enough to see the championship board place my name at number 1. Then the pain reached my heart, and the ground came up to meet me. Lyra reached me before the healers. She pressed both hands over the burned lines on my chest. Her crystals poured cool light into my damaged channels. 10 fingers, I said. Be quiet. I counted. I will reduce the number myself if you do that again. She was crying and angry. I decided silence was a strong defensive skill. The public judges could not hide the result. Zavon had proposed the evaluation, named the terms, and accepted the return rule before every broadcast crystal. I received the championship medal and 1,000 gold while lying on a healer's platform. My wealth rose from 195 gold after preparation costs to 1,195 gold, 3 silver, and 2 copper. My class reached level 15. My mana reserve increased from 160 to 300. The National Student Board placed me first in the region and 9th in the Empire. My resources now included the Tournament Vault, a capital travel license, and the right to purchase restricted crystal material. My status had moved from Academy Curiosity to publicly recognized champion. All 3 scales moved before sunset. Zavon returned to the platform in a borrowed judge's robe. He did not look at the fountain. The Imperial evaluation confirmed Rowan's strategic value, he announced. Further classification will occur after the Purity Blessing. Kellen walked onto the field. He held Osric's letter above his head. The blessing removes 3% of every finalist's power, he said. My family was promised a higher rank for keeping silent. The broadcast crystals showed the Imperial stamp. Zavon ordered the transmission stopped. Selma had already copied it to all 12 arena crystals. The crowd began shouting. Osric raised both hands. The blessing is safe, he said. The contribution is temporary and protects the Foundation barrier. No student will be harmed. At that moment, the championship medal against my chest turned violet. Every finalist cried out. Lines of light rose from their bodies and flowed beneath the arena. Kellen fell to one knee. Lyra's 3 floating crystals dimmed. The strength left my arms so quickly that I could not sit up. The measuring board showed the loss, exactly 3% from every finalist. The arena gates locked. Vera appeared inside the championship medal. Her transparent face filled every broadcast crystal. The divine core has begun its final cycle, she said. Osric is not blessing you. He is feeding you to me. The white arena floor split down the center. Violet light rose from a chamber far below. A crystal larger than the entire western hall opened one bright eye. Osric looked down at it. For the first time, the tired director smiled. 99%, he said. At last, our god is awake. The 5th day began beneath a locked arena with 100 finalists on their knees. Violet threads pulled mana from every body. The divine core took exactly 3%, just as Osric's letter promised. The number sounded small. A knife removing 3% of a heart would also sound small until someone used it. My reserve fell from 300 to 291. That was not the worst part. The drain pulled at my class pattern as if invisible fingers were trying to remove the shape of my power. Osric stood at the split floor and told everyone to remain calm. He called 3% a reasonable price for a defense no army could break. Vera did not recover, I said. Vera tried to destroy 24 years of work. Selma drove Vera's fragment into the arena controls before Zavon's guards could stop her. Every broadcast crystal turned purple. Osric's confession reached the public squares outside. Lyra faced him. You never asked the students. People refuse necessary pain, Osric replied. Leadership means choosing for them. The Hollow Star had destroyed his home city 24 years earlier and killed 40,000 people, including his brother. Fear had become his reason for everything. Zevin supplied money and prisoners. The academy supplied gifted students. 1% from 20 graduates became 2% from 50, then 3% from every student in the top 100. The core now held abilities from 3,412 people. Kellen cut the violet thread connected to his stolen seed. Fire threw him backward, but the line broke. 100 finalists saw that resistance was possible and attacked their own restraints. The arena became a very organized riot. Zevin sent guards toward Selma. Taro threw his iron pot. It struck one helmet, bounced from another, and landed on the gate lever. All 4 exits opened. My strongest technique, Taro said. The audience escaped, then gathered around the outer broadcast walls. Thousands still watched. Guild recorders copied every word. Violet crystal covered Osric and filled him with hundreds of stored spells. The measuring pillars reached 5,000 and broke. He released one wall of force. 5 of Lyra's 6 barriers shattered. The last pushed us through an open gate while Osric descended into the foundation chamber. Selma pulled Vera's fragment from the controls. Full alignment takes 1 hour. After that, he becomes the core. Then, we need crystals, I said. We collected all 120 fragments of my tournament network. Kellen opened the vault, and we took silver wire, medicine, and pure crystal powder into a supply room near the lower stairs. Taro opened his emergency food case. It held 3 meat pies, fresh rolls, smoked chicken, hard cheese, and berry jam. You carried all that through the tournament? Selma asked. Emergency means emergency. The pies were cold but rich with peppered beef and soft onion. The rolls remained warm inside. Lyra spread berry jam over mine because my injured fingers could not hold the knife. We ate for 10 minutes while violet light pulsed beneath the door. Warm food stopped my shaking. It reminded me why people were worth saving. Lyra replaced my bandages. You cannot catch 5,000 units. I will not catch them. Every stored effect still carries its owner's signature. Selma understood. You can return them. Only if the divine core enters my network. I used 280 mana. The broken stones melted into clear light and fused around Vera's fragment. The new connected seed was the size of my fist and held my class pattern. If I placed it inside the divine core, both memory structures would touch for less than 1 breath. That was enough for one command, return. Selma mapped 3 sealed doors and linked Vera's fragment to the old broadcast channels. The public would see whatever the core remembered. We entered the lower stairs together. Kellen melted the first door's 100-unit firelock with his stolen seed. He offered the core to me. Keep it, I said. Earn the rest yourself. The public broadcast carried his choice. His rank did not change, but his reputation did. The second door required Osric's signature. Vera had spent 19 years inside the core while he used her phase spell. Her soul remembered his magic, his experience, and his identity. My seed released that memory, and the lock opened. 48 missing graduates slept in clear chambers beyond it. Violet lines connected their preserved bodies to the divine core. Vera's name marked the nearest chamber. Her body is alive, Selma said. Her soul is with us. The public saw every prisoner. Families outside began calling names. Osric's crime was no longer 3% on a secret order. It had faces. The third door opened by itself. The divine core filled the foundation chamber with 3,412 moving lights. Osric floated before it in violet armor. Zevan waited below with 12 guards. Transfer the core to Imperial control, Zevan ordered. Osric laughed. You delivered prisoners and called them materials. Now you want clean hands. The core broadcast memories of Zevin signing transport orders and watching the first drain. When he ordered his guards to kill the witnesses, they lowered their weapons instead. Zevin attacked them. Kellen stopped his sword with the dented shield. Taro struck his wrist with the iron pan. The sword fell away. You hit a capital inspector with cookware, Zevin said. The pan passed its imperial evaluation. The crowd outside laughed through every broadcast crystal. Osric raised both hands. The divine core released 12 stored abilities at once. Fire covered the ceiling. Ice crossed the floor. Invisible pressure folded the central platform. The guards were thrown aside. Lyra created 3 barriers. I released the last 2 stored shields from my old bracer. 5 layers broke one after another while we ran toward the core. Kellen sent a fire beast against Osric. Osric erased it with a graduate's anti-magic spell. Taro used Windstep to pull Selma away from a falling crystal pillar. The bent pan remained in his other hand. Osric moved faster than any human body. Stored speed carried him between us. His fist struck my chest. The connected seed caught 12 units from his armor. Before I flew backward, I hit the floor hard enough to lose my breath. The seed remained whole. You could have helped me, Osric said. Your class could preserve every defender in history. No child would ever stand beneath a broken barrier again. You could have asked them. They would have refused. Then you had your answer. He attacked again. Lyra stepped between us. Her first barrier broke, the second cracked, the third held long enough for Kellen to strike Osric from the side. Violet armor threw him away. The connected seed in my hand shone brighter. Vera appeared beside me, visible only through the crystal. The central channel opens when he attacks, she said. I can hold it for one breath. What happens to you? I go home. Her body waited in the chamber behind us. I stood. Only 11 mana remained in my reserve. My arms were burned. My class had no attack left to store. Osric had thousands. That difference no longer mattered. We did not need his power. We needed its address. Lyra, I said. She looked at the core, then at the seed in my hand. She understood. She fired her strongest light needle at Osric's face. He raised one hand and opened the divine core to draw an anti-light spell. Vera screamed. Every light inside the core stopped. The central channel opened. Lyra formed a crystal path beneath my feet. Taro released Wind Step into my back. Kellen struck the ground with his shield and sent a wave of fire behind me. All three forces carried me forward. Osric turned too late. I drove my connected seed into the center of the divine core. For less than one breath, the giant crystal entered my network. I felt 3,412 abilities. I felt decades of practice, victories, fear, pride, and pain. I could have pulled them toward myself. The system warned that my body would fail before receiving even 1%. I had never intended to take them. Every memory carried the signature of its owner. I gave one command. Return. The divine core cracked from the center. 3,412 lines of light left the chamber. They crossed the academy, the city, and the entire empire. A retired healer recovered the warmth in her hands. A miner felt 20 years of missing strength return to his back. Former students woke as forgotten spell patterns filled their minds. 100 finalists rose in the arena when their stolen 3% came home. 48 complete souls left the core and entered the bodies waiting in the crystal chambers. Vera's violet fragment became empty. Her eyes opened behind the glass. Osric's armor vanished layer by layer. Fire left him. Healing left him. Strength, speed, barriers, and 24 years of stolen experience returned to their owners. The great director landed on the central platform wearing a plain gray uniform. His true combat rank appeared on the surviving measuring pillar. Rank B. After power above 5,000, the number looked very small. Osric tried to raise one final barrier. It measured 40. Lyra walked forward and tapped it with one finger. The barrier broke. Thousands watched through the broadcast crystals as Academy guards placed iron restraints around Osric's hands. He had wanted to become a god before the entire nation. Instead, the entire nation watched him discover his own strength. Zevin moved toward the exit. Kellen placed the dented shield in his path. The Imperial guards who had lowered their weapons stood beside him. You cannot detain me, Zevan said. I represent the capital. Selma pointed to the broadcast crystal. Then the capital can explain you. Zevan used an emergency transport seal before anyone could bind him. White light took him from the chamber. He escaped, but he left his crown-shaped helmet in the arena fountain, and his signed orders in front of the entire empire. For a capital official, survival was not the same as victory. The divine core did not explode. Once the stolen effects departed, it became clear crystal. My connected seed remained at its center. The system declared that the artificial core had lost its forced owner and accepted a voluntary guardian. I refused control over other people's abilities. Instead, I changed one rule in its foundation. Nothing could enter again without the owner's consent. My class reached level 20. My mana reserve rose from 300 to 500. The new core allowed me to grow crystals with a capacity of 24 instead of 12, but each still required 4 mana, and each still remembered only one effect. My power grew without changing the cheat. By noon, every public board carried the same results. Osric was removed as director. Draven was recovered from a lower storage cell before the core could consume him, then transferred to a public court. The families of the 48 missing graduates arrived at the academy gates. Vera walked out of her chamber after 19 years. Her first steps were weak. Her first request was food. Taro led the victory meal that evening. He roasted lamb with garlic and herbs until the outside was dark and crisp while the inside remained soft. He served potatoes covered in butter, bowls of green vegetables, fresh bread, and thick gravy. For dessert, he brought honey cake with layers of cream and warm berry tea. Vera ate 4 plates and cried over the bread. It is only bread, Taro said gently. You did not spend 19 years inside a rock. Fair, take another loaf. The academy courtyard held students, miners, guards, researchers, and returned graduates. There were too many people for the tables, so they sat on steps and training mats. Every person had witnessed some part of the final victory. Every story matched because the divine core itself had shown the truth. The temporary Academy Council awarded me 5,000 gold for exposing the theft and placed another 5,000 under Selma's control to care for the returned graduates. I received the sealed Foundation Laboratory, ownership of my research, and the title of Independent Crystal Guardian. The Imperial Student Board moved my name from 9th to 1st. My strength reached level 20 and 500 mana. My money became 6,195 gold, 3 silver, and 2 copper. My status moved from the boy who could grow a useless stone to the first guardian recognized by a divine core. All 3 scales moved for the 5th time. Kellen did not receive his family's mines. His father lost them during the investigation. The miners elected Kellen as temporary manager only after he agreed to public accounts and safety inspections. They gave me more work and less money, he told me. That sounds like honest employment. I preferred being hit by the boar. Taro gave him another potato. Selma began interviewing the returned graduates. Vera joined her as soon as she could stand without help. Neither woman showed the slightest romantic interest in me. They showed great interest in my crystals and repeatedly threatened to lock me out of my own laboratory if I ignored medical advice. Lyra waited until the courtyard became quiet. We sat on the greenhouse steps where the first light needle had entered my crystal. She held the championship medal, now clear again. You caught a rank S attack, she said. You fought a false god. You returned 3,412 stolen abilities. The first 10 units were still the important ones. Why? They were yours. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she kissed my cheek. That was not magic, she said. I know. Do not try to store it. I only have 1 cheat. Her laugh was quiet again. I still liked it more than the arena. At midnight, the clear divine core sent a pulse through my connected seed. The system detected 8 matching structures beyond the academy. They had been built in other regions under Zeven's program. Osric's core had not been the only artificial god. One by one, 8 distant signals reached me. They did not ask for help. They opened like crystal eyes, and every one of them remembered my name.